The Bhagavad Gītā is perhaps the most treasured text of the yoga tradition. And yoga exists as part of a bigger Indian philosophical tradition. But yoga has a very special place within that tradition because it's the practical school of Indian philosophy. So Indian philosophy is concerned with the same perennial questions that have puzzled human beings since the beginning of time. What's it all about? Where do we come from? What's the point of life? And how can I live well? So these questions yoga addresses in a very practical way. So in the Indian system, the basic idea is that everything is one, ultimately. So ultimately everything exists within this one field of consciousness. Well and good. However, as a human being, I don't know about you, but this is not my day-to-day experience. I experience differentiation and duality. Do you? We wouldn't be here if we didn't, yeah? So yoga recognizes that the duality of life is also real. We experience hot and cold, pleasure and pain, ups and downs. This is normal. It's part of the game. Because we exist, as well as existing in this field of consciousness, we are born in this realm of nature. So we mentioned this last night here, Marcella. What did we say? What is nature?
The inhale and exhale.
The inhale and the exhale. Nature is pulsation. Would you agree? Do this with your left hand. And what are we doing? It's like the heartbeat, yeah? It's expansion and it's contraction. Now keep doing that with the left hand, and with the right hand start doing this. What is the right hand doing? If the left hand is circling or cycling, yeah?
Cycling.
So the left hand is pulsating and the right hand is cycling. Let's switch hands. Now do you notice how what the two hands are doing, go back to the first way, is that really the pulsation and the cycle, they're really like two ways of describing the same phenomenon. Would you agree? There's an up cycle, there's an expansion. There's a down cycle, there's a drawing back in. So Hatha Yoga, the physical practices of yoga, Ha is the sun, is heating, is drawing in, yeah? And Ta is the moon, is cooling, is releasing. And yoga is about balancing these pairs of opposites. As long as we live in nature, we're part of these cycles. So yoga recognizes the cycles, that's just part of the game. But we can learn to work with them and to work with the natural pulsations of life so we can actually stay more easily in rhythm and harmony. So at a certain level you could say the whole aim of yoga is to learn to stay in rhythm and harmony even as the ground that we're experiencing life in is constantly shifting and changing. Now sometimes when we're alive, we experience these ups and downs. It can be very difficult. Many spiritual traditions mention, life can be like suffering. Life can be hard and challenging. This is inevitable because everything's always changing. Now when things go very nicely for you, what do we tend to want? Oh, it's going great. What do I want? Beginning with M, having 4 letters. More. I'd like this to continue, but will it always continue like that? No, it will change.
No.
So they say in yoga, even our pleasure carries the seed or the germ of pain because it's going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So this is inevitable, but we don't need to be so pained by the pain of life. If we train ourselves to be present, and we can enjoy all the rich experiences of life without getting so carried away by them. And when things are very difficult, what did we say last night, Marcella, about if we have a problem, what does yoga remind us of?
You start to look for help.
We can look for help, and if our problem, maybe, have you ever on occasion felt overwhelmed by life? It's just so much, but my problem is so big, yeah? One of my Indian teachers, he says, James, remember, your problem is always smaller than you are, because it exists in your awareness. So as we start to tune in to our awareness, when life gets challenging, we can look at the challenge and like take a step back and work through it in a more, let's say, constructive way. And when things are really, really enjoyable, we can also take a step back, so we can really relish it and savor it, but recognize that, yeah, this is something that's going to go, so we enjoy it even more, but we don't get so attached to it. Does that make sense? This is the idea in yoga. Now, the Bhagavad Gītā is a very interesting text. So last night we spoke a little bit about its setting, and it's set in the middle of this huge epic in the Indian tradition. Because yoga being practical, it recognizes that human beings learn in lots of different ways. And story is one way that we can really learn quite easily. Would you agree? There's a beautiful story about story. I said I'd do more storytelling in the evening sessions, but anyway, it's come up now. So there's this story that's set in the kind of. You went yesterday to the indoor market in San Jose.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the daytime. Yeah.
What's it like?
I didn't find it overly pleasurable.
Was it quite busy?
It was quite busy, and yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was. It was quite busy, and there was a mixture of different types of products being sold, and there was some butchers in there, and some fishmongers.
Okay.
And, I didn't feel that I wanted to sort of spend much time there after walking around.
Okay. So have you ever seen one of those old markets in kind of like, you can imagine maybe in the Middle East, and you have all these kind of, it's the hot sunny day, and all the awnings providing shade.
The Chatuchak market in Bangkok is
kind of like that, yeah.
That's
so not quite so big, but we have like an old town, and there's a big market square. And all of the vendors have set up their market stalls with their fine fabrics and silks, with their handcrafted furniture, their jewels, all their precious craft work, all the fruits and vegetables, the artists and the artisans, and everybody is selling. And normally when people come close, what do the vendors do?
Try something.
They say, yeah, sir, come try it. Look at this beautiful silk, it would suit you so nicely. And like this. And this young girl comes into the market square, and she's almost naked, she's just got a few rags on. And she looks like nobody's given her any shelter or any food for some time. And when she comes close to the market stalls, the vendors don't want her anywhere near their stall, because they think, oh, people won't want to come near her. So when she comes by, they don't say anything to her, they don't even look her in the eye, they just ignore her. And if she lingers, they try to shoo her off. And it's getting really hot. So she's looking for shelter from the sun, and she finds in between a few stalls there's some shade. And she goes to crouch down there, waiting for the sun to become a little less intense. A few minutes go by, and this beautiful woman enters the market square, and she's dressed very finely, gorgeous silks, and she looks like a queen. She's so regal and majestic in the way she walks, and she has a few attendants with her. When she walks by the stalls, how do the merchants respond? Madam, we are so honored by your presence today. Please come, look at this beautiful silk I've found. I've been saving it especially for you. Would you like to try it? And they're very solicitous, yes, they're very encouraging. They want, and even if she doesn't buy, they want to be seen, to be associated with her. So the complete opposite to the way they interacted with this young girl. And this majestic figure she makes her way around the square, and then she sees a young girl sheltering in the shade. And she looks at the young girl, and she looks her in the eye. She says, "What are you doing there? You need to be out here in the open." And the girl says, "They don't dare look at me." And so the beautiful one says, "We can change that. Come, walk with me." And the girl says, "Who are you?" And you know what the older, beautiful woman says? "My name is Story." Story. The people don't dare look at you, but from now on, we will never be separated. Let us walk together, and then your message that the people need to hear will no longer be ignored. So do you know who the little girl is? Story takes her into the folds of her beautiful silk robes, and the girl's name is Truth. So often as human beings, do we always like to look at the truth? Sometimes we prefer to just push it away, yeah? And so the idea of this story is that when we involve, when we kind of weave truth into a story, it helps us digest it. So yoga, being practical, it recognizes that if it just tells us what to do, if somebody tells you what to do, how do you often react? Not do anything except for that, yeah? So the way the yoga teachings are set out is really beautiful, because it's never a didactic instruction. It's always much more an invitation. It's an empowerment. So Krishna in the Gita, which we'll get to shortly, sometimes he tells his student, Arjuna, very clearly why something's perhaps not a great idea. But he always does it in such a way to invite his student to come to the recognition himself. So the Gita is woven into a story. And the idea is that the story can help us turn to look at the things within ourselves, about ourselves, that perhaps up to now we may have, perhaps naively, perhaps willfully, perhaps ignorantly, turned a blind eye to. Does that make sense? So we mentioned yoga is about unifying or gathering or bringing everything into togetherness, including those parts of ourselves that ordinarily we sometimes forget about or we don't pay much attention to. So have you noticed that some parts of yourself you know quite well, you're very confident about them, you train them, you practice them, you exercise them, but other qualities, other parts of yourself you maybe leave kind of in the shadows. Does that sound reasonable? So those parts that are in the shadows, what's going to happen if we leave them in the shadows? Can we experience unity? No. And also, if those things are part of us, but we're always leaving them in the shadows, how are they going to feel?
Bad. Manifest into disease and...
So because they're part of us, but we're not giving them attention, we're not kind of inviting them to the party, they're going to feel left out, and they're going to have to kind of look after themselves with limited resources because we're not giving them the light of awareness. And so they might come out sideways, sometimes people say. They come out in a way that is not so healthy, not so helpful. So our task in yoga is to have the courage to pay attention to all parts of ourselves and then reconcile all the parts. So we said last night, yoga is really a recovery program. It's a rehabilitation program. It's a remembering. So bringing all the members of our being back into wholeness. So if we talk about the members of our being, who are we talking about? What are they? If we're a gang, let's say, who are our gang members that live here? in this field or this territory?
Our organs.
Our organs, yeah. Our emotions. Our thoughts. So, yeah, our capacity.
Joints and muscles and.
So we have these amazing, in Sanskrit there's a word indriya. Say indriya.
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 Have you heard of Indra? Who is Indra? In Indian mythology, Indra is the king of heaven. And he's also the god of rain. So his weapon is the thunderbolt. Yeah. Now, being the king of heaven, heaven in the Indian system is described as a place where desires are always realized. So imagine that you're the king or the queen of heaven. What do you get used to? You get used to getting what you want instantaneously. So if you don't get what you want instantaneously, how do you feel? Yeah. Yeah. Now the idea is that in this field of our experience, our sense of identity is also a little bit like Indra. It's used to getting what it wants. We're creatures of habit. So when things fit into our habitual way of operating, it's very easy. But when things challenge that habitual way of operating, when they challenge our patterns, that can feel, do the gesture again a minute, you did it so well. It doesn't quite flow, it doesn't feel so easy. And we can resist it, yeah? So the idea is, this is our, let's say, ahankara. Say ahankara. And this gets translated as ego, but it's not an exact equivalent of the Jungian ego. It's the sense of self, the sense of I. I'm here, I'm not there. I can do this, I can't do that. I like this, I don't like that. So when our idea of ourself, even if it's limited and isn't really helping us, is challenged, we can get like this. However, we only have this idea of self because we are blessed with amazing gifts called the indriya, the organs, if you like, or the powers, the divine powers of incarnation. So we have our sense powers. We can hear, we can feel, we can see, we can taste, we can smell. We have this amazing power called in Sanskrit Vak. Say Vak.
Vak.
Now Vak is the power of expression and speech and language and communication. Is this an amazing power? Lift your left hand up in the air and make a circle with your wrist. Somebody makes some words, we hear it and we know what, isn't this incredible? And we say this is such a simple thing compared to the relative complexity of our vocal and expressive and interpretive capacities. And Vak isn't just speech and language and sound. We also express and communicate with our bodies, our movements, yeah. Thinking of our bodies. One of the distinguishing features of human beings, as well as this expressive capacity, is our hands, yeah? The opposing thumbs. We can do so many things with our hands. We can pick things up and put things down, but what else can we pick up and put down as well as physical objects? We can pick ourselves up and move in space, yeah? Also, maybe you can pick up ideas, yeah? Which can, we can also put them down. So ideas can be useful and ideas can be imprisoning and limiting. But we have the capacity not just to pick new things up, but also to put things down. This is an amazing gift.
To create.
To create, yeah. So the third of these are called the action powers. So we have the sense powers of the senses. We have the action powers, the doing powers. So we've got speech and expression, picking up, putting down. The third is called pada. Say pada. And pada means locomotion. You were at the coast here, Martin, did you see any amazing animals when you were at the coast?
Yeah, so monkeys, turtles, sea
turtles. Yeah. When you see a turtle?
They were mating actually. I saw them mating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you see a turtle swimming?
That was. I went out on a boat trip.
Okay. And when you're on the boat trip, did you see some of the sea
dolphins as well? We saw dolphins.
Can you swim, Martin?
Not so well.
But you can swim, yeah?
I could swim. Yeah.
But next to a dolphin, you feel like I can barely swim, yeah?
Yeah.
Or a seal, you know seals? Like where I'm from a colder place than here, there's lots of seals. In the water, if you swim next to a seal, I feel like I like swimming a lot, but if I'm next to a seal, I feel like I can barely swim. But when the seal comes on the land, I can swim a little bit better than the seal can walk. Yeah? The seal is vastly superior to me in the water. But on the land, I'm also more more capable than the seal. Does anybody like rock climbing? Yeah. One time I was in Thailand at this climbing place. I was a beginner climber, still am. But next to me, on a more difficult route, this Italian man came who grew up in the Dolomite Mountains. He'd been climbing since he was 3 years old. And he just waltzed up the cliff face like it was nothing. And I thought, wow. But then some monkeys came along and they made him look like he made me look. Yeah. They could climb so easily. But what's special about the human movement capacities? Monkeys can climb better than us. Dolphins and seals can swim better than us. Many
do a little bit of everything.
Exactly. We're very diverse in our movement capacities. We've got this versatility. So we can do everything, more or less. We're not the fastest runners, but we can run a long way. And we can walk a long time.
We can swim, we can climb.
We can swim, we can climb.
Like we adapt. The human being is so adaptable.
Yeah, so we've got a really broad range of movement capacities. And we have the capacity to digest and assimilate and eliminate. Yeah. And we have the capacity to create and to recreate. And the idea is that if we do things that we have not done before, we can recreate our understanding of ourselves. And this is one of the reasons why play and exploration is a really useful thing to involve habitually in our life. Because when we play, we can discover new things. Yeah? Has anybody walked past a children's playground recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, what did you see?
In the children?
Yeah.
A lot of joy, a lot of the consciousness on the ground, a lot of exploring attitude,
so you see creativity.
Yeah.
So when you leave children to play, they make up games. And they make rules. And within the rules create limits, but because of the limits, you have to get creative. Yeah? And when you play, you do things you've never done before. So the idea in yoga is keep playing, keep exploring, because when you do that, you can keep learning. So we mentioned yesterday that one of the qualifications for yoga, there are basically two qualifications. Are you qualified to practice yoga? I know the answer, you are. One, you came out of a womb. You've been born. And two, to have the idea, I don't know. If we think we know, it's like we close ourselves to new learning. But when we remember, no, I don't know, maybe I can discover something new, then we can learn. So we have these amazing capacities of experiencing and acting. Have you ever felt some of these indriya, these great powers, moving in different directions? Like maybe your sense of smell is like, yeah, I'd like to go over there. But then your sense of hearing, oh, there's something amazing music coming over here. And oh, but look, it's so beautiful over there. And how does it feel when you get pulled in all these different directions?
Confusing.
Confusing.
Yeah, contradictory is a little bit.
Contradictory. We don't want to feel like that, yeah? Do you remember the... how long have you lived in Australia, Martin?
13 years.
Did you grow up in England?
Yes.
Do you remember the Australian soap opera Neighbours?
Very much so.
Have you ever heard of this soap opera Neighbours? In England it was a big hit. I think maybe it's still on. But many of the actresses went on to become pop singers, including Natalie Imbruglia. Do you know this? Natalie Imbruglia.
Yeah.
Do you remember her biggest hit?
Yeah.
Nothing's right, I'm torn. Yeah. I'm not.
I'm all out of faith. This is how I feel.
Illusion never changed into something. Which, yeah?
Yeah.
Nothing's right, I'm torn. Yeah. So when we feel torn, does it feel good? We don't want to feel torn. She had a hit song about it because everybody could relate to it. We don't want to feel torn, we want to feel together. So yoga is about weaving togetherness back into the reality of life. Recognizing that it's normal that we get spun out sometimes. It's normal that we get fragmented because life is always changing. But we can do something about that. So the beginning of the Bhagavad Gītā, where does it happen? Where is it set?
Wow.
On a battlefield, yeah? But this field, we could say, this is the field. And the different parties that are in conflict, it's like these different parts of ourselves, that sometimes they can get into their own little programs instead of working together as a cohesive whole. So in this story, which we spoke about more last night, we have this amazing archetypal setting. There's a huge war that's been brewing for a long, long time. And we have two sets of armies. One set of armies, one force if you like, is called the Kauravas. Say Kaurava.
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 And Kauravas are related to the verb kr, which is the verb to do. So we could say the Kauravas are the forces that are based on things we've already done. This is like the force of our habitual patterns, the force of habit, even if it's not leading us in the direction of our soul's deepest longing. And the other party are the Pandavas. Say Pandava.
Pandava.
And these are the forces of conscience, you might say. So Pandu, their father, his name means clear. Like clear, so clear conscience, yeah, clear. So they're the forces, if you like. You could, it's like the good guys and the bad guys, but it's much more subtle than that. The forces of conscience, that light inside that never does go out and is always offering guidance if we allow ourselves to tune into it. But have you ever noticed, I don't know, I've experienced sometimes if I'm feeling torn and I don't quite know what to do, sometimes I have trouble distinguishing the voice of conscience from a tricky, strategic mind voice. Has anybody else ever experienced this?
Yeah.
And this is the idea of yoga as a rehabilitation plan or a recovery project. Because we've somehow become a little bit distanced or separated from our conscience. How does that happen?
Projecting our insecurities through life and the roles that we subscribe to live and make money and
so we've got to survive in this world, and when we're young and small we don't have so many resources, so sometimes we do very sensible things to help us survive in a particular situation, but sometimes they become patterns that aren't always the best solution. Maybe they served us really well at one stage of life, but then they become obsolete, but they have inertia. And so it's hard to change those patterns. So we said last night, really the battle of the Gita is to face those patterns that we have become blind to, that are limiting us, and to actually rehabilitate them, to bring them back into harmony by a steady, courageous engagement. So the setting of the Gita is the battlefield, but that battlefield is really here. Because the Kauravas and the Pandavas, these two sets of, they're cousins, they grew up together. They grew up in the same field. So really, we could say they're different parts of ourselves. And the challenge is, what do we do when we feel that conflict? How can we proceed when we feel torn?
Try to calm down, to
Yeah.
observe, to...
Yeah, so this is what the Gita is going to tell us. It's going to go into that in lots of practical detail. So from last night, Marcella, what do you think, what are the main things we need to recap before we continue?
The history previous of the war,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
You think it's useful to go over that, yeah?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because it gives a little context.
Yes. So the Gita, do you know what Gita means? It means song. And Bhagavad, from Bhagavan, it means totality. So the Gita is the song of totality. So the way I understand it is the Gita is training us or inviting us into singing our own true song. To come into rhythm and harmony so we can express the fullness of who we really are. And the Bhagavad Gita is woven in to the broader fabric of this amazing epic called the Mahabharata. Now in the Mahabharata, there are many, many stories. We could say the central plot line is this tremendous war that develops. Now the situation happened, there was a kingdom, and the king had 3 sons, and consequently, one of the sons, because there were 3 heirs, he made a vow that he would be celibate his whole life, because he thought his brothers would do the job of providing the heirs to the throne. However, the 2 younger brothers, the 2 other brothers, they got killed in battle. And so you have a kingdom with no heir. And the remaining brother, Bhishma is called, say Bhishma. He made this terrible vow. He's very, like a stubborn character. He's not going to go back on his vow. He says, no mother, I can't do that. So the queen mother is very anxious because there's nobody to continue the royal line. And she has these 2 young daughters-in-law, but no sons anymore. Now, there is a backup clause in the Indian system. If the husband is not able to provide the sons or the daughters because now he's been killed in battle or for some other reason, you can call on a rishi, a noble rishi. Do you know what a rishi is?
Sorry?
Yeah, he's like a sage, a seer, a wise one. And she knows, and he's basically a person who normally lives outside society. So he's supposed to be pure. Now, the queen is related to a great sage called Vyasa. Say Vyasa.
Vyasa.
And Vyasa is actually the person who compiled the Mahabharata. He's like the person who wrote the verses, if you like. And Vyasa is an ancient man. Have you heard of, do any of you practice pranayama? You heard of pranayama? So pranayama is a whole body of yoga practice that works with prana. And prana is like the life force, like chi. And the idea in pranayama is to extend the life force until eventually you can take 1 breath a day. Because the idea is our life will be measured in breaths and heartbeats. So if you just take 1 breath a day, you can live for thousands of years. Have you ever met any of these rishis who've lived for thousands of years?
No.
I have not either, but one of my Sanskrit teachers in India, he has. One of these rishis came on a tour of South India from the Himalaya, and he was giving talks about the ancient knowledge of the rishis. And the ancient rishis, they speak a special rishi language. And nobody knows it. But it's quite close to Sanskrit. So this ancient rishi was with his assistant who knew Sanskrit. So the ancient rishi gives his talk, his assistant translates into Sanskrit, and my teacher translates into the local language, which is called Kannada, in Karnataka state. After the presentation, the rishi says, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to receive them. So my teacher puts this to the audience, and one man says, yeah, I've got a question. That's a really interesting presentation, all, but I want to know, is he really 4,322 years old? And so my teacher says, well, I can ask. So he asks the assistant, and he says, sir, the gentleman would like to know if your master is really 4,322 years old. And the assistant doesn't even ask his master, he just turns back and he says, I don't know. I've only been with him for the last 763 years, so I couldn't possibly say. But you've heard stories like this, yeah? So the idea is, why does somebody want to live so long? The idea in yoga is that if you become fully integrated and fully realized, you can become almost overwhelmed by the desire to share your insight. And so sometimes these rishis, once they realize the potential of human incarnation, they feel, I should stay around a bit longer to help other humans in this process, yeah. And so let me slow down my intake of prana so I can make my vehicle operate much more efficiently, and it will give me more time to help humanity, is the idea. So Vyasa is this type of sage. He's written all of these Puranas, these great mythological works of the Indian tradition, so we have them to help us explore and understand reality. So Vyasa is a great sage. So the queen puts out the call to him telepathically. I need help. So Vyasa arrives at the palace. He says, what do you need? And so the queen explains the situation, that she has these two young princesses who don't have anybody to provide the seed for the continuation of the royal line. So would you do it? Now a sage, normally he doesn't involve himself in such matters, but he says, okay, very well. Now these princesses, they're teenagers, you know. Do you know, like, boy bands?
Yeah.
How do the boys look, these handsome young boys? What is their look?
They look the same.
And what is the look?
Like clean.
They're not so manly, yeah? They kind of look like boys.
Yeah.
Almost like girls.
Yeah.
Very pretty. No hair on their face, no hair on their chest or back. Very well groomed, yes?
Yes, well groomed.
So the princesses, they're at that age, yeah? They still kind of like the boy band look, yeah? And the Queen Mother instructs the eldest daughter-in-law, tonight is a very important night for your life and the life of the whole of our royal line. You are very honored. Bhagavan Vyasa, this great sage, is going to come and impregnate you. And this is for the good of the whole kingdom. So, my child, you receive him like a real princess. You understand? Yes, my lady. And she doesn't know anything. She's just really scared. Anyway, that night, Vyasa comes into her bedchamber. And what does Vyasa look like?
Not like a boy.
No. What's his skin like? Like leather, yeah? He's been out in the elements for thousands of years. He's like a tree almost. He's like thick, dark, like a tree bark. Leathery skin. How long is his hair?
Dreads and everything.
Yeah, it's like twice as long. He's a big, tall guy. He's like almost 2 meters tall. And his hair's about 4 meters long. What's he smell like?
Not good.
Yeah, he doesn't smell like sandalwood paste and fine ointments. He smells like the jungle.
Yeah.
And he's a man of great presence. And he walks into the bedchamber And the princess is like, she's so kind of like petrified, she closes her eyes. The following morning, the queen asks Vyasa, and he's a sage, so he knows, yeah? She says, was it successful? And Vyasa says, yes, she will give birth to a son, but she kept her eyes closed the whole time. The boy will be born blind. And the Queen Mother, how does she react? We can't have a blind king. No, there's another daughter-in-law. Can you stay tonight? And Vyasa's like, once is already a lot to risk myself with a girl. Please, 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 for the good of the kingdom. Okay. So, elder daughter-in-law speaks to younger daughter-in-law. And how does younger daughter-in-law feel? She's even more scared than the older one was, yeah, because her elder sister has failed. But it so happens that younger daughter-in-law, her maidservant, looks a lot like her, but is of a slightly different temperament. And she's had a little bit of a more worldly upbringing, you might say. So she is preparing her lady for the arrival of Vyasa, and the young princess is very, very scared. And so the maidservant says, you don't need to worry. And she tells her all about what will happen, and she is horrified. She's so horrified that she turns to her maidservant, who seems to know a lot about these things, and says, well, how about you go in my place? And the maidservant says, oh no, but this isn't. Oh, and she starts taking off her precious jewellery and says, you can keep these. And the maidservant says, well, if you insist. I am your servant, it's my duty to follow you. Vyasa comes in, it's already dark. Next morning, the queen asks, so how did it go? So, well, she's a very different temperament to her elder sister. Yeah. The boy will be very intelligent, and he will be a very just man. He will be far-sighted, a man of great vision. And the queen, she isn't reassured because she thinks, very different character, what do you mean? Oh yeah, she wasn't shy at all. And the queen is very suspicious, so she calls her immediately. And the young princess cannot hide from the queen. Yeah. And so she admits what she did. And the queen says, my child, tonight is the most important night of your life. This is the last chance to save the kingdom. Vyasa, I begged Vyasa to stay one more night. He's agreed, but I know we're already pushing things 3 nights in a row. But he will do it, but you mustn't let me down. So you must keep your eyes open, okay? Welcome him in. Ask your maidservant. She knows what to do. And the Queen Mother herself is present. When Vyasa comes in, she makes sure that he goes into him and says, okay. And so the young girl, she does her best. And the morning comes. And the Queen says, well. And Vyasa says, yeah, she kept her eyes open. But she was scared. She was so scared, she was pale white like a ghost the whole time. And so the boy will be born as an albino. He will have this rare skin condition. And so the queen thinks, an albino king? Well, it's better than a blind king, okay. And so Pandu, which means the clear one, because his skin's so clear, he will be the king. And he's a good king. He does well. But one day he gets cursed. And he gets cursed that if he touches either, he has 2 wives, if he touches either of them, he will die. And so he thinks, I can't survive if I stay at the palace. Because if I'm in the palace, I'm bound to touch my wives. And so I'm going to go off to the forest. And I'll leave the kingdom in the hands of my brother. Because everything's already established now. He can rule as the regent, no problem. So Pandu goes off to the forest with his 2 wives. They've not had any children. And this is a problem, again, it's a recurrent problem. I don't know what it is in these Indian epics, but the kings who can't have kids, it happens a lot. And now, there's no way Pandu can have children, because if he touches either of his wives, it's over. But his two wives have gone with him into the forest, Madri and Kunti they're called, which is interesting. Madri and Kunti. There they are one day, and they're saying, oh, it's so bad we didn't manage to have children. I wonder if there's anything we can do. Sometimes there are ways out of situations that one would never normally imagine. And the three of them are together, and Kunti, who's the younger of the wives, she says, well, actually, you know, I have a boon. You know this word boon? It's like a special gift. Now, Kunti, she was a princess before, and when she was a girl, another great sage called Durvasa came to visit her father's palace. Now the Rishi Durvasa, he has a particular reputation. He's a sage with a temper. He's easily offended. He's very generous, but if you're not respectful, or if he sees you being not respectful, he might curse you. So if he comes to visit your kingdom and you're the king, it's a great opportunity, because he could shower wonderful blessings on you and your people, but if you offend him, it could be disaster. So the king knows that his young daughter Kunti is very, very emotionally intelligent, and she's got that broad vision, and he thinks, yes, this is the perfect person to look after Durvasa and his entourage. So he entrusts his daughter with this task of making sure that Durvasa's needs are met. And when Durvasa leaves, he's very happy with the way that she's looked after him and his group. And so he calls her over and he says, my child, your hospitality has been wonderful. I must reward you. And she says, no, no, my lord, serving you I have everything I want. No, 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 I insist. I'm going to give you a boon. Listen carefully. I'm going to give you this special mantra. And with this mantra, you can summon any god and bear his child. You can use this mantra 5 times. And he instructs her in the mantra, and he leaves. She's 15 years old. Can you imagine? You're a 15-year-old girl. You've just been given a mantra that you can summon any god. Have his child. What do you think might happen to your thoughts? You might be very curious, yeah? So one day, mum and dad are busy with some royal business, and Kunti is left by herself. She has her own garden behind the palace, and beyond the garden is the forest and the hills. So she wanders off beyond the garden to a private place, and she thinks, and also when you have this divine child, it can get born in a special way too. So she's thinking, she can't contain her curiosity, but she thinks, well, if I'm going to indulge my curiosity, I should still be a good girl, and yes, I know who I will invoke. I will call the god of justice, the god of law, the god of good governance, called Dharma. Yes, I'm doing my royal duty even as I am also exploring this new gift. So she calls the god of justice, Dharma. He comes. She has a life-changing experience. She becomes pregnant. Somehow, miraculously, I don't quite know how that happens. Yes, that's correct, yeah. Wait a minute. No, sorry, I got this wrong. No, rewind.
Okay. All right.
That's later. She doesn't know who to call. She wanders out into the forest. She's walking through the forest, and a beautiful sunbeam comes through the forest canopy. And what does she think? Ah, yes, of course. Who's she going to call? the sun god. Can you imagine? So he comes, Surya. So she has a very illuminating experience, and she falls pregnant with this child of the sun god. Somehow it happens, nobody notices that she's pregnant. And when it comes time to deliver, happily no one's around, and she's able to make her way down to a convenient nearby stream. Give birth, nobody's, somehow she knows how to be a midwife. She gives birth to this beautiful golden child, and she puts him in a basket and sets him in the stream, praying for his wellness, because she thinks, well, I can't, if I show this child to the court, it's over for me. So she keeps it all secret. And off he floats. So anyway, now we fast forward it, yeah? So years go by, they're in the forest, and she never used it again. It was such a soul-shaking experience, it was enough for a while. But now she's in the forest, and there's no heir to the throne. So now she thinks, she says, oh, well, I have this boon that Rishi Durvasa gave me. And so they say, well, have you tried it? Oh, no. But Rishi Durvasa gave me, I'm sure it must work. Yeah, well, maybe you should try it. So Pandu and his younger wife, his other wife, they leave her to go to a private place. And this time she thinks, yeah, well, this is for the kingdom. And so she summons, you know now who?
Justice.
Dharma, the god of law. And she then gives birth to the eldest son of Pandu. Even though Pandu is not the biological father, they call him the Pandavas. And he's called Yudhishthira. Say Yudhishthira.
Yudhishthira.
And Yudhishthira means the one who is steady in conflict. So he's the son of Dharma. Dharma means the action which sustains. And he becomes the eldest son of Pandu. So he's the heir to the throne. Okay, it worked, fantastic. And so she says, well, one son is great, but wouldn't it be great to have more? And he says, yeah, shall I try again? Yeah, try again. This time she feels, okay, I've done my duty. I called the god of law. She makes her way up to the mountain. This time, who does she call? Remember, she tasted the gifts of the sun before, so she walks up the hill into the low mountains. What element sometimes gets stronger as you go higher up?
The wind.
The wind. So she summons Vayu, the god of wind. Can you imagine? And he comes. And they come together, and then she falls pregnant, and she then gives birth to Bhima. Say Bhima.
Bhima.
And Bhima is the strongest man in the world, the son of the wind, the son of prana. And now there are two children. Oh, it's working great. Well, two's great. Let's go for three. And now she thinks, okay, so I've been the sun, god of law, the wind. Who shall I try next? And she thinks, I know. Let me summon Indra, the king of heaven. Indra comes, and she gives birth. Do you know who? Do you know to who? To Arjuna. So Arjuna is the third of the Pandavas. So now we have this triangle of Pandu and his two wives in the forest and three boys. How does the other wife feel?
Bad.
Yeah.
Jealous.
She's not happy, like this curse was nothing to do with me. And now, she's got 3 kids, what about me? And the king says, yeah, I'm sorry. But then Kunti says, well, I could teach you the mantra. I've only got one left. What do you mean you've only got one left? Well, Durvasa said I could only use it 4 times. You've already got 3, and now you let me have 1? But anyway, she's grateful anyway. She's got 1 shot, 1 chance. She's not a stupid lady. Who does she call?
Surya.
In the Indian system, in the pantheon of gods, there are what are known as the Ashwin twins. They are the celestial physicians. So she gets 2 for 1. So she calls the twins. and she is able to be with them. And then she gives birth to twins, Nakula and Sahadeva. Say Nakula and Sahadeva. So we have 5 Pandavas. And then they grew up in the forest until one day when they're young teenagers, their father touches his younger wife. He dies, and then the younger wife decides she wants to be with him, and she follows him. She makes a funeral pyre for herself, and they go. So Kunti, the mother of the 3 elder boys, and the foster mother of the younger 2, they go back to the palace where Dhritarashtra, the blind brother, has been ruling. He also, guess what? He also had great difficulty making children. But he didn't have a boon from Durvasa to call him. So he and his wife, they called their court magicians. And they tried everything. And when nothing was left, they called the black magician. And he did this terrible ritual. And he says, you will become pregnant. But your pregnancy will not be a natural one. You'll be pregnant for much longer than normal. And you will not give birth to a child. You will give birth to a lump of matter. But this matter, we will divide it into 100 pieces, and then you will have 99 sons and 1 daughter. Trust me. And they're so desperate to have children, they trust him. And it happens like this. And when she's about to give birth, she's in tremendous pain. It starts raining blood, and bats, and snakes fall from the sky. And all the court advisors tell Dhritarashtra and his wife, you must not allow this child to live, you must abort this fetus. But they've been wanting children so long, they do what the black magician told them. They put the lumps in 100 pieces in various pots, and they leave it to incubate for another 9 months. And then they have 100 children. And these are the Kauravas. The Pandavas were off in the forest. The eldest is called Duryodhana. Say Duryodhana. Duryodhana. Which means the one who is difficult to overcome, the one who is difficult to defeat. So he's the eldest, the most senior of these habits, you might say. And he has been the eldest son all these years. So what does he expect?
The king.
He expects he's going to become king. And then one day, when he's about 12, 13, arrive these 5 sons of gods, who are the sons of the old king. How does Duryodhana feel? He's not happy about that at all. The Pandavas are friendly to begin with, but Duryodhana keeps trying to kill them. Again and again and again he tries to kill them. He tries to drown them, he tries to poison them, he tries to burn them. Again and again and again. So this enmity develops. And then, basically, the Pandavas realize they have to go somewhere else. And so they leave, and they basically set up their own kingdom, eventually. And they invite Duryodhana and his brothers to visit. And it's so beautiful, because what happened was, when it was so clear that they weren't going to get along, Dhritarashtra said, let's divide the kingdom. It's no good, this enmity. And so Duryodhana said, I'm not going to divide. It's my kingdom, Dad. How can you give it to them? And he says, don't worry, my child. You will have this kingdom, and we will give them the desert. Okay. But it says in the Mahabharata, when human beings live in dharma, when we live in balance and harmony, then the deserts get transformed into abundant lands of plenty. And when we live in adharma, when we come out of balance, then the abundant regions become deserts. So, Yudhishthira, the eldest son, remember who's his dad?
It was
Dharma, the god of justice and law and rightful action. So with Yudhishthira as their leader, they transform the desert into an abundant land of plenty. And many people go to live there. And when Duryodhana visits, he's consumed again by jealousy. And he wants to defeat them. And he sees that Yudhishthira, because he is always attached to the law, he sees a weakness, an opening. And he challenges Yudhishthira to a game of dice. Now the idea is, if you're a king and you invite a king to a game, you're supposed to accept the invitation. And so Yudhishthira accepts the invitation. But if Yudhishthira is a just young man, do you think he's going to be very good at playing dice?
No.
No. And Duryodhana, he's going to try any trick in the book. And you know who he's going to get to play for him? His uncle Shakuni, who is the most crooked expert dice player of them all. So what's going to happen? Yudhishthira's going to lose. Yeah? So they start off gambling for horses and gold and grain and cattle and the things that kings normally gamble. And Yudhishthira keeps losing. But he keeps playing. And before long, he's lost his kingdom. He's lost his grain, he's lost his money, he's lost his army. And says, well, I've got nothing left. What does Duryodhana say? No, no, no. You still have plenty to wager. Your brother, for example. And Yudhishthira wagers his youngest brother, and then his next youngest brother, and then he wagers Arjuna, and then he wagers Bhima. And he's lost all his brothers. And then Duryodhana says, no, you can still bet yourself. And he does. And he's lost himself. He says, well, that's it. Take the kingdom, just leave us now. Just leave us a village and we'll just recover. And Duryodhana says, no, 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 no. You still have something. Now, it so happens that the Pandavas, they are also married. But they are married to one woman. One woman with 5 husbands. And her name is Draupadi. Say Draupadi.
Draupadi.
And Draupadi is said to be the most beautiful woman in existence. And she was the daughter of a king called Drupada. And because she was such an amazing young princess, her father realized that all the princes would want to marry her, but he felt nobody's going to be worthy of my Draupadi. She who is beauty incarnate, she who is so full of Shakti, of power. And so he devised a challenge. And the challenge was that you had to fire an arrow. Up there is a bullseye. And it's in the middle of a wheel, an iron wheel with lots of spokes that's constantly turning. And you have to stand over there and look in a pond at the reflection of the wheel, and somehow, with your back to the target, only aiming in a reflection, send the arrow into the bullseye through the moving target. And if you can do that, then you can marry Draupadi. So he's made a really hard challenge. So who can do this? Remember,
Arjuna.
yes, Arjuna, because Arjuna is the greatest archer of all the Pandavas. He's the greatest warrior. However, you remember that child who was the child of the sun?
Mm-hmm.
He's called Karna. Now, he was discovered by a man who drove chariots and brought him up as his son. But one day, he arrived in the palace where they're all growing up when they were having a martial arts tournament. And he's an amazing archer. Now, the Pandavas, because they're the sons of gods, and they've grown up in the royal household, they don't think that some commoner should be allowed to participate. But Karna, who's really the son of Surya and really their brother, though they don't recognize him, he's an amazing warrior. So Duryodhana, the eldest Kaurava, he says, he is surely a king. Look at the way he walks, look at the way he fires his arrows. I don't care who his parents are. He looks like a king to me. In fact, I'm making him a king now, and he grants him part of his own kingdom. So he becomes a very close friend of Duryodhana, one of his closest allies. Karna is there about to fire the arrow, But Draupadi, she insults him because he's the son of a charioteer. And the insult makes his hand not quite steady and he misses. There's only one other man who could possibly make the target, and that's Arjuna. He does. Draupadi is one. And then they're going home with Arjuna's bride, Draupadi, and they're so excited. The boys called, "Mother, we've won a wonderful prize today." And the mother says, before she even comes out of the house, she says, "Share it evenly amongst all of you." And the boys say, "Okay, we will honor our mother's desire." And so they do this. And so Draupadi is the wife of all five. And she's the most beautiful woman on the earth. Duryodhana, he's envied the Pandavas for their nobility, for their prowess at arms, for the way that they act, the way they interact with people. And he's also envied them for their wife. He's lusted after her since he first saw her. And so he says to Yudhishthira, no, there's still one thing you have. And Yudhishthira says, well, I'm now your slave, and according to law, slaves have nothing, so what could I possibly give you now? He says, no, you still have your wife. And Duryodhana instructs his next brother to go and get her. She's on her period. So traditionally, in India, when a woman's on her period, she doesn't come out. She stays in the female quarters, and she's just taking that time to be in her own cycle. So she's not wearing the type of finery which normally she would appear in public in. She's just in a kind of very simple sari. And when it's called Dushasana, Duryodhana's brother, arrives, she's very proud. She's like, no. And she tells he wasn't, whatever he said, whatever happened, you cannot take me. But Dushasana he manhandles her, he drags her into the court. They make the gamble. Yudhishthira loses, of course. And Draupadi can't believe it. Now Bhima, who's the second son, remember Bhima, the strongest man in the world, and he's the son of the wind. What do you think he wants to do? He wants to rip Duryodhana's head off. Arjuna, the greatest archer, they cannot wait. They want to just attack. But Yudhishthira, the eldest brother, says, no, we've got to follow the rules. Now Draupadi, she protests, and she asks all the people in the court, all the elders, she says, how can you let this happen? You're not worthy to call yourself elders. But Duryodhana is like, no. Gag her. Slaves do not speak in the court. And disrobe her. That, even though it's a plain sari, it's still like nice fabric. She says, that's far too fine a fabric for a slave. Undress her. So this is the crown princess. And now he's going to basically humiliate her. But she prays to Krishna. Now Dushasana's trying to undress her, but miraculously her robe just keeps getting longer and longer and longer and longer. So he's trying to undress her, but he just keeps on pulling fabric. And he falls down. Bhima makes a vow right there. And he says, because Duryodhana says, disrobe her and bring her here. And he lifts up his robe and hits his thigh. So completely disrespectful. And Bhima makes a vow that he will not rest until he has broken Duryodhana's thigh, and until he has basically washed Draupadi's hair in the blood of Dushasana. So from this point on, the prospect of peace doesn't look very high. But everybody says to Duryodhana, look, everybody knows you were cheating. That's not how a king behaves. You've got to give him the kingdom back. How does Duryodhana react? His dad tells him, it's like, what do you mean? I finally got what I want. And now you want me to give it back? No way. But Dhritarashtra says, look, all the advisors, the whole kingdom knows you cheated. You won't have any stability. You can't proceed like that. And Duryodhana is very, very upset about that. But he agrees to a different tactic. And he says, okay, we will free them. They can have their wife back. But let's do like this. We'll play one more time. And if they win, they can have everything back. And we just call it quits. But if they lose, then they have to go into exile for 12 years. 11 years in the forest away from civilization. In the last year they have to go back into society but remain unnoticed, incognito. And if they're discovered, they lose again and we repeat the 12-year process. And Yudhishthira agrees to this. And what happens? He loses again. So exile, here we come. So Bhima and Arjuna, these great warriors there, and Draupadi, proud that she's not happy at all, off they go into exile. But in exile, interesting things happen. Yudhishthira, he's more like a sage than a warrior. He meets lots of sages in the forest. He becomes wiser and wiser. Bhima and Arjuna, they go on many adventures and they accrue various powers and weapons. And then in the final year, sure enough, they manage to stay incognito, but they also build more alliances. And anyway, we could tell where we've got to now in Mahabharata. We could have spent the whole month on here, so we'd have to skip certain things. But basically now, battle is inevitable because they come back, and Yudhishthira says to Duryodhana, okay, we honoured the terms of the exile, and we understand you've become attached to your kingdom. Just give us 5 villages. Give us each a small little village, and we'll just leave it at that. And Duryodhana says, I won't give you a village. I won't give you the amount of land you could fit on the head of a pin. And so the Pandavas think, well, okay, if that's the way it has to be. Everybody tries the path of diplomacy. Krishna, who is related to both of them, to all parties, he also tries to find some solution, but nothing doing. And so war is inevitable. And the question then is, who will Krishna fight with? And so we had this last night. It's quite an interesting episode because he's a very powerful person and he's got a great army. Duryodhana, being, as it were, the regent, he's had plenty of time to build a strong alliance. The Pandavas are in exile, so they've not had so much opportunity, but they've still got quite a lot of allies. But Duryodhana's army is already much bigger. But he knows how great a warrior Arjuna is. He knows how mighty Bhima is. He's still scared. He's still not 100% confident. So he wants Krishna in his army, on his side, and then he'll feel okay. Arjuna is very close to Krishna. So the Pandavas send Arjuna. Arjuna arrives where Krishna is resting. And he sits at the foot of his bed in meditation. Some minutes go by and Duryodhana barges in, making a real noise with the door. Krishna wakes up and he sees Arjuna at the foot of the bed and he smiles. And he sees Duryodhana. And Duryodhana says, Krishna, you know why we are here. The war we have waited for is almost upon us, but there's still one question. Who will you fight with? And Krishna says, I'm not going to fight in this war. Now Duryodhana doesn't quite believe him. He says, you know, I think this war is a disaster. It's not good for any of you. You should just make peace and divide the kingdom. And Duryodhana says, yes, we know it's not going to happen, so what will it be? And Krishna repeats himself, no, I'm not going to fight. It will be like this. One of you can have me, but I will not wield any weapons. I will not fight. The other can have my army. Krishna's undefeated huge army. Who does Duryodhana want?
Yeah.
Who does Arjuna want?
Krishna.
And Duryodhana, he's anxious now because he knows if he gets that army, he's feeling really confident. And Duryodhana says, Krishna, you woke up when I came in, so I should have first choice. And Krishna says, well, it is true that I woke up when you came in, but the first thing I saw when you came in was Arjuna, so I guess that meant he was here before you. So maybe he should have first choice. And Duryodhana, he always favours them. So Duryodhana's thinking, And so Krishna turns to Arjuna, so what do you want? Well, obviously Krishna, we want to be with you. And Duryodhana can't quite believe it. He's like, got the army. And so Duryodhana has an even bigger army. But Arjuna has Krishna as his advisor, and he's going to drive Arjuna's chariot in the war. Comes the day of the battle, and Arjuna says to Krishna, take me out between these two sets of armies. Let me see with whom I must do battle in this bloody business of war. But then, what happens? What does Arjuna see on both sides of the battlefield? He sees his family, relations, friends, his teachers, all the people who are dearest to him, he sees on both sides. And he thinks, I can't fight. Now normally Arjuna, there's nothing he likes more than going to battle. He loves it. He's an archer, he's a warrior. It's his art, you might say. It's his sport. Now normally it's his duty. Normally when he goes to fight, he's thinking of all the people that he's protecting, all the people that he's fighting for. But this day, he sees so many of them all around him, and he thinks this is just disaster. And so Arjuna, this great hero, the most important warrior amongst all the Pandavas, he collapses, sinks to the floor of his chariot, his hair standing on end, his voice is parched, his mighty bow falls from his hand, and he says to Krishna, I can't. I will not fight. And this is the point the Bhagavad Gītā begins. So, what does this tell us?
Conflict of human suffering and the predicament of relationships.
Yeah, so this story is not only set ancient India. Where is it set?
No.
Now. Anytime we find ourselves torn, anytime we come to an awareness of how we're fragmented, we're on that battlefield. And so the Gita is set now. And Arjuna has this moment of crisis in the middle, between the two sets of armies. And that's where yoga happens. In the middle. In the junction point. So sometimes people have this strange misperception. Oh, you practice yoga, you must be so chill. You must always be like, When I first got into yoga, I was living in Thailand, and a friend of mine from university was passing through, and he came to visit me. I was teaching English at that time in university, but I just started to really get into yoga. And I'd done this yoga teacher training program at a yoga studio, and my friend had never heard of any of these things. Like, a yoga studio? What? They just do yoga all day? Wow, who runs it? I said, well, it's an American guy. Wow, he must be so relaxed, yeah? No. He's a yoga practitioner. He's not an established yogi. So yoga is for everybody who's interested. And when we find ourselves in challenging situations, there's the idea that the opportunity for yoga is great. Because when we find ourselves torn, then we've really got an opportunity to uncover or recover our innate capacity to weave harmony into the complexity of life. Does that make sense?
Can you repeat this?
So when we're in a tough situation, then we've got an opportunity to find out our true, deeper capacity to actually bring balance and harmony into the challenges of life. So the setting of the Gita on the battlefield, when I first encountered it, I was a bit puzzled. Like, isn't yoga all about peacefulness? Why is it on a battlefield? And there's many reasons, but one is to remind us that there's no situation too stressful or too extreme to practice yoga. You can practice yoga wherever you are, whatever situation you're in. Another benefit, if you like, of the battlefield setting is I had to tell the story in a very kind of accelerated way, but imagine you've been following the story for weeks. Like, some people get into those long, what do they call them, box sets, yeah? Like, Netflix, does any of you watch Netflix? I don't, but my sister's an actress, and one of her flatmates is a comedian, and she writes comic songs, and one of her songs is about how her life got consumed by Netflix. Yeah, she watched the story, you get into the story, and it builds up to a climax. Yeah, and as the story builds to a climax, where are you sitting? On the edge of your seat. Yeah. So if you're writing a play and you want to deliver the key message of the play, where do you want the audience when that is delivered? On the edge of the seat. So the setting of the Gita in the Mahabharata brings us to that place where we're really attentive. So we pay closer attention, we can notice more, we can learn more quickly. So Arjuna, the student, Krishna's beloved friend and his student, is in a real terrible situation. He's torn, he doesn't know what to do. But he's with his friend Krishna. Who is Krishna? Truth, yeah. You could call him like the supreme. But literally Krishna means black or dark. So as a noun, Krishna means black or dark. And as a verb, Krishkarshati means to draw towards. To draw towards, like a kind of magnet. Like it pulls you towards it. Like the black hole at the center of the universe. So this is Krishna. So the idea that in the center, in the cave of our heart, if you like, is the light of our conscience. And this is Krishna. It can teach us how to stay centered. Arjuna means bright. It's on the surface. It's doing great things, but it's known. Now Arjuna finds himself in a situation that happens to most of us. We come to a point in life where the rules that we have lived by are no longer robust or vast or inclusive enough to deal with the complexity of the situation we find ourselves in. Does that make sense? And we all live by rules. Even if we're the most free-spirited person, we have our kind of way of doing things, yeah? So Arjuna's in that situation where his mode of operating is no longer adequate. He doesn't know what to do. But he's very fortunate because he's got Krishna with him. But the idea is, we also always have Krishna with us. There is a light inside, there is the pilot, if you like, of our conscience that's always with us, if we allow ourselves to tune into it. Have you ever tuned into the voice of your conscience, and your conscience says, yes, you need to do that, and you think, oh no, I can't do that, and you decide to push the conscience away and stamp it out? Yeah? What happens then to our connection to conscience? It gets weakened, yeah? And so the idea of yoga is a rehabilitation project, to rehabilitate this connection to conscience. Now Arjuna finds himself in this situation. He does not know what to do. He's overwhelmed. He collapses on the floor. And what does Krishna say to him?
Get up.
Get up, stand up. Oh, stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give it up, don't give up the fight. So he tells him, like the Bob Marley song. Literally, he says, Uttishta Parantapa, stand up, get up, you are a great hero. He says, Arjuna, why? So Arjuna's there, his hero's face streaming with tears, overwhelmed with this misplaced sympathy or misplaced compassion, not knowing what to do. And Krishna says, Arjuna, what's going on? Why have you let yourself be overwhelmed by this misplaced compassion at this crucial moment? All your life has been preparing you for this moment. So throw off this meager faint-heartedness and rise up like the great hero you really are. So he doesn't say, don't worry Arjuna, it'll all be all right. He says, Arjuna, you're a great hero, so start acting like one. And so this is the idea in yoga. Krishna is very clear about this. He says, when you're a human being, Your experience is your responsibility. You are the sovereign of your life. You are the sovereign of your actions and your experience. So Arjuna, human being, get up and take ownership for your experience. This is an opportunity. It might seem challenging, but it's a great opportunity. So rise up like the hero you really are and face it. So the word hero, do you know this posture called Virasana? Virasana is just a seated posture, like this. And it means the posture of a hero. So, but Vira is an interesting word in Sanskrit because it also means human being. It means hero or heroine, but it also means human. Vira, yeah. So it means the human being who has done the heroic thing of wrestling with all that it actually means to be a human. In other words, who has faced the suffering of life, who accepts it and works with it, rather than turning a blind eye to things and pushing things away. And so Krishna exhorts Arjuna to be all that he can be as a human being. And then Arjuna says, yeah, but Krishna, how can I fight against my gurus? Because over on the opposing army, lined up with Duryodhana, are his archery master and his master in the martial arts, his two most important teachers. He says, how can I fight against them with the very weapons and techniques that they taught me to use? Can we sympathize with Arjuna?
Yeah.
Yeah, what did we say? What do they represent, these gurus who he has to fight against?
The little wheels and the...
Yes, we gave an
bicycle.
example last night of, imagine a young child is learning to ride a bicycle. Often the child doesn't actually learn to ride a bicycle, they learn a quadricycle because they put two little extra wheels on the back, yeah? And we told a story. Imagine that the child, their favourite colour is blue. The parents couldn't find a blue bike, but they could find blue stabiliser wheels. And the child really likes the little bike. And which bit do they like most? The blue extra wheels, yeah? And then one day Mum and Dad say, what should we call the little child?
Charlie.
Charlie. Charlie, the time has come. Tonight, the stabilizer wheel fairies will sweep through the neighborhood and they'll collect any stabilizer wheels that are no longer needed so that other children can make use of them. You no longer need them, my boy. And what does Charlie say? Think again. No, I love my stabilizer wheels. You're crazy. I don't want to. No. And he sleeps next to the bicycle. And the parents think, okay. So they wait another month, still nothing doing. So eventually one night they just take the wheels away. How does Charlie feel in the morning?
Rust.
Is he happy with his parents? Not at all, yeah, he's angry. But then they take him out to a place where there's lots of open space and they start running along holding the seat of the bike and he's riding on two wheels. And then, did this happen to you? Then they let the friend or the parents lets go of the seat. And then what happens?
Keep going until you find out that they're not
You keep
supporting
going
it.
for a while and then
Maybe
you
he
fall.
falls.
Yeah. But before you fall,
Or hits a tree.
before you fall or you hit something, what happens?
He feels like he can do it.
You feel, wow, you feel like you're flying.
Yeah.
And that experience of feeling like, wow, I'd never have imagined it could feel like this good, is strong enough that even after you fall, you want to get back on again. And do you want to have stabilizer wheels? No, I want to fly again, yeah? So now Charlie, he's into this bicycling thing. I don't mind falling because that flight, that's just so amazing. Some weeks go by and now he's out cycling with Mum and Dad around the park and they see a little boy with some blue stabilizer wheels and they say to hey Charlie, do you want to get those, look, there's those favourite old wheels, do you want to get them back? What does Charlie say? No. They're for babies. Yeah. Doesn't want them anymore. Now, before he experienced flight, he couldn't imagine that he would be interested in it. But his soul already knew he wanted to go there. But his mind was, no, you can't go there. And so this is the idea of the guru. Guru literally means heavy. Any influence, person, place, thing that's heavy duty enough to shift our awareness from one state to one that's less limited, this is the guru. So the stabilizer wheels were like a guru. They helped Charlie start riding a bike, getting into riding a bike. But it wasn't really bicycle riding because he had those extra 2 wheels. But once he was empowered to feel confident to have somebody ride with him, it was only another little step to be able to really ride. So in order to do that, he had to leave the guru behind. So the idea is, the gurus that Arjuna is being exhorted to fight against by his teacher Krishna, these are patterns that used to be helpful, but they've served their purpose. He now has to go beyond them. Does that make sense? So, in the story, his teachers are called Drona and Bhishma. They're actually happy when he fights against them. Because they're no longer living up to what they taught him. Because he's moving on to a new level of experience. But Arjuna continues and he says to Krishna, yeah, but even though my gurus are not living up to what they taught me, even though they're acting for selfish interests, if I kill them, everything I experience will be tainted with their blood. Can you sympathize? And what's more, Krishna, we don't know who's going to win this battle. What we do know is that whatever is the result, it's going to be disaster for everybody. All the people I hold dear, their families will be devastated. So I don't see any good that can come of this. If I kill my cousins, I won't want to live. Can we sympathize with Arjuna? Yeah, but who are the cousins? Really? They are like these tendencies that are now confining. They're like tyrants, yeah? They're tyrannical and they're keeping the kingdom in a limited state. Energy is not able to flow, it can't move on and grow in the way that it really could possibly do. It's somehow being poisoned and limited. But sometimes the things that are poisoning us and limiting us, we get very attached to them. They become, as it were, our familiar comfort zone. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So when something is the familiar comfort zone, even if it's not pleasant, it can be very hard to leave it behind. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So Arjuna, we can sympathize with him. But then he goes on, so he basically says to Krishna why he's having such a hard time acting. But then he says, also Krishna, I feel that my very essence, my very nature has been struck by weak. I feel so weak now, I feel overwhelmed. And I don't see how I can possibly act in a way that feels right. Please tell me what would be for the greatest good. I am your student. Give me your shelter. If I win this war and I win the kingdom, what good will that do when all the people who are closest to me have been devastated? Even if you were to offer me the kingdom of heaven, I don't see how it would be a consolation. I don't know what to do, Krishna. I am your student. Give me your shelter. And this is a crucial moment, because what is happening here? Yeah, he's surrendering. So he's basically demonstrating his qualification for yoga. He's showing that he does not know. He's acknowledging, I don't know what to do, and he's asking for help. So he's making himself very explicitly a student, somebody who is inquiring. And you could basically, yoga practice is about inquiry. It's about looking. One way I describe, can I ask which year you were born, Martin?
1976.
I was born 77, so maybe, and you went to school in England. Sometimes people say if you're lucky and you go to a good kindergarten or infant school, you learn the most important things to set you up for life. I don't know if this is true, but one thing I learned at the infant school was called the Green Cross Code. Do you learn it too, Martin?
Yeah, look, listen, stop,
look, listen. Do you have the Green Cross Code in Costa Rica?
No.
Before you cross the road.
So it's how to cross the road. So on the road there are many things that might come along, yeah? So stop, look all around, and listen. And the idea is this is how to safely cross the road. But stop, look, listen is basic recipe for how to practice yoga. Stop, not in the sense of stop doing things, but check, am I acting how I really would like to act? Or am I just running on autopilot? So stop in the sense of give yourself enough space to check in and inquire, why am I doing what I'm doing now? Is this who I really want to be in the world? Am I doing what is really my soul's deep longing? Or am I allowing myself to be bullied or tyrannized by my habits, even if they're no longer serving me? And look, the very first imperative verb in the Gita is pasha. Say pasha.
Pasha.
And pasha means, can you guess? Look. And then shrinu, say shrinu, is the first imperative verb in another Sanskrit text called the Adityatudayam, which is another hymn of instruction on another battlefield in the Ramayana. So stop, look and listen. This is what yoga practice really grows from. So Arjuna is starting to do that. He's saying, I don't know what to do. So when he acknowledges he doesn't know what to do, he empowers himself to look for a solution. Now, I don't know, have you ever been in a situation where you feel kind of like you're cornered? You're stuck in a corner. You can go one way or the other way. And that way, no, I don't want to fight against my brothers against my cousins and my teachers. And if I run away, that's no good either, because then tyranny will take over. So sometimes you feel trapped and you see two ways, yeah? And both ways feel no good. Have you ever experienced this?
Yeah.
So now what Arjuna does, it's so important because he was feeling stuck, but then he surrenders, and now other perspectives open up. Now he can look in a more relaxed way. He can look all around. And then insights can arise. Krishna will start to teach. Also in these verses we see the purity of Arjuna's intent. He says, I'm not interested in the kingdom. I'm not even interested in the kingdom of heaven. I just want to do what's for the good of the whole, what's good for everybody. So please, Krishna, tell me clearly what is going to be for the best. Now Krishna is supposed to be the supreme, yeah? Best teacher going. After this point, Krishna is going to speak for almost 700 verses. Now if Krishna is the best teacher and Arjuna is a very sincere and well qualified student, why does Krishna have to go on for 3 hours of verse? Again and again in the Gita, Krishna will say the same thing. Arjuna, the yogin is steady. The yogin is the same in gain and loss, in victory and defeat, in joy and sorrow. And he says that same thing many, many times in slightly different ways. And sometimes people, I've been in classes where people say we're studying chapter 4 or chapter 6 or chapter 12. Someone say, wait a minute, Krishna's saying the same thing he said the last chapter and the chapter before that and the chapter before that, you know? Why does he have to keep repeating himself? And then one of my friends, she said, have you got it yet? He keeps repeating it, so we might actually get it. It's a slightly different way. It's like some songs, yeah? They repeat certain melodies or certain, and then we start to get more familiar with it. Like in the martial arts, for example, you repeat certain movements, and then the idea is you can then just do it automatically. Or if you're a very good cook, you know how to manipulate the tools to cook things quickly. You practice, and then you can do it quickly. So the idea is, yes, Krishna does repeat himself, or let's say he re-emphasizes his key message in a slightly different way again and again and again, to help us internalize it more fully. Because how many ways can we get distracted? How many ways can we kid ourselves or cheat ourselves? Endless, would you agree?
Yeah.
So when the message is being delivered in lots of different mutually complementary ways, there's more cumulative chance that it'll really settle in and support us in a more robust way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So Arjuna says, Krishna, Nishchitam bruvitan me, tell me clearly what is the right way forwards. And then, Eva muktva rishikesham gura keshav parantapa nayotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvaha. So then the narrator continues, says, having said this to Krishna, Arjuna, nayotsya iti. Do you notice there's like a pause there? So in the Sanskrit grammar, nayotsya iti govindam, there's this pause.
Mm-hmm.
So Arjuna says, nayotsya, it means I will not fight. Then there's this pause in the grammar, in the syntax of the phrase. Uktva, and having said that, tushnim babhuvaha. Tush. Can you guess what tushnim means? Yeah. So Arjuna says, I will not fight, but then tushnim babhuva. Then he became silent. This is so important. Because Arjuna says, I will not fight, but he doesn't then go rushing off home. He stops. So he's stopping, looking and listening. He becomes silent. So the idea is he's letting, in that silence, he's allowing that the grip that his preconceived ideas and his conditioned beliefs have on him subside. And he allows space for new insight to emerge. Yeah? So he has the courage to stop. Now, we've already mentioned today this idea of you have to be a hero to practice yoga. We mentioned it last night as well. In the world we live in, to stop and inquire, am I doing what I really want to do? Am I making the choice that is really in harmony with my soul's deep longing? Or am I being pushed around by external ideas that I've somehow allowed myself to become adhered to? Would you agree it takes courage to inquire like that? Yeah? Do you all have like an email account? Are you on any mailing lists? There are different types of mailing lists. I have one, and I welcome you to sign up for it. But I recently signed up for a newsletter because somebody was sharing some useful information. But having signed up for their useful information newsletter, every time now I go to my inbox and I see, oh, I think somebody might have written me, a letter about some work I'm doing. But no, it's these people trying to sell me things. What you're doing with your life, this type of message again and again and again. All around in the society we live in, we don't have to look far at all to find somebody who's going to invite us to spend money we don't have, or to, buy something we could never hope to afford. It's very easy to do that. But to find somebody who's going to invite you to stop, look and listen and inquire deeply into the nature of yourself and reality, we have to be a bit more determined to find that type of...
That's not so popular either.
Yeah.
People don't get there.
Yeah, because if you want to do that, you have to face pain. You have to face the painful realization that, up to now, sometimes I've been like my own enemy. Sometimes I've ignored things that really it would have been a good idea for me to give a bit more attention to. And so it's a bit we have to train ourselves to digest that bitter medicine about ourselves. And that's the path of the hero. And so this is one of the ideas in yoga, is we're always going to be habitual creatures. But can we develop the habit of examining our habits? And can we develop the habit of facing our own habits that aren't so nourishing anymore? Because once we've swallowed the bitter medicine of I've been my own enemy a few times, then we remember it's worth it. Because just like Charlie on his little bicycle, falling off and separating ourselves from the stabilizer wheels was worth it. Once we face, I allowed myself to be limited by this false belief for so long. And again I fell in the same trap. Once we've done that a few times and come through it, when we face the painful cycle, okay, I know what this is about. This is actually a cleansing, this is a healing. Okay, I can do this work. I know it's worth it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Arjuna, very importantly, he stops, he acknowledges he doesn't know. And when he acknowledges he doesn't know, he makes himself what they call in Sanskrit a patra. Patra. Yeah. So when Arjuna stops and he acknowledges that he does not know, he makes himself what they call in Sanskrit a patra. So patra means leaf. So sometimes in India, but also in many parts of the world, you can make plates or cups from leaves, yeah? So the idea is, if you're a patra, your cup is empty. I like coconut water, yeah? And Marcelo, you brought some coconuts this morning, so later today I will have a coconut water. But if my cup is full of water, and Marcella comes and offers me coconut, and I extend my full cup, what will happen if she pours the coconut water?
They will not fit in.
It will be wasted and it will make a mess. So if I want to receive, I have to make myself available to receive. So Arjuna makes himself available. So he acknowledges, I don't know what to do. I feel tyrannized by my ideas, I feel trapped. But rather than get stuck, he relaxes and allows himself to become quiet. Becoming quiet, he allows the grip that his tyrannizing thoughts have on his awareness to subside. And as that happens, then Krishna can begin to speak. And Krishna is the voice of conscience, we might say, the voice from the dark, the voice that speaks from the cave of our heart. And the Gita says, smilingly, Krishna begins to speak to him. In between the two sets of armies on the battlefield, smilingly, Krishna begins to teach. So maybe have you ever experienced that? If you're in a really stressful situation, if somehow you manage to relax, there's like a little bit of smile. And you can be almost surprised that there's a bit more space in that place where previously you felt so trapped.
Also time goes slower, like really slowly.
Sometimes,
when you're really stressful and something happens, time goes slowly, everything moves slow.
Yeah. So if we can pause, we can create then space for new insights to emerge. And so one of the central practices in yoga is to pause regularly, every day. The world is spinning really fast. I don't know the figures, but one of my friends is an astrophysicist, and he told that the world's spinning really fast, we're hurtling through space really fast. Basic practice in yoga, at the junction point of the dawn and the sunset, before you start your day, before you start your evening, just stop and gather. And like an orchestra, does anybody here play the guitar? Or you know somebody who plays the guitar?
Yeah.
6 strings on a guitar, yeah? One lovely thing about a guitar is if you don't know how to play it, but you've got a friend who's a good guitarist, they tune it for you, you just strum the guitar. How does it sound? Sounds nice, yeah? Sounds lovely. You don't need to know how to play, you just strum it. It makes a beautiful sound. but let's say it's a day like today, it's quite humid, the temperature's changing a bit, what will happen to the guitar strings after not very long? You thought you were Jimi Hendrix, it just sounds so great. And then you pick up the guitar again, you want to hear that lovely melodious sound, and how does it sound now? Oh, it's discordant. How many strings in this instrument? So many. So the idea is we have to tune in regularly, because life's so many different influences, they're always going to be pulling us in different directions. If you ever go to see, have you ever been to see an amazing orchestra?
Yeah.
However good they are, maybe they're all master virtuoso performers. They've been playing together for 30 years, but between every movement, they will tune in again.
Mm-hmm.
Same idea. Yoga is a constant practice. So again and again, we have to tune in. And the idea of yoga techniques is they train us so we can tune in a little bit more easily, a little bit more readily. So maybe we practice a meditation technique and we sit for some time. Or we work with asana and we're balancing the body in space. We're working with the breath to harmonize the energy flow. But once we become more and more accustomed to that, we can tune into it a little bit more readily. So this is the idea. Again and again, we have to tune in. And when we tune in, we can find more space and we can find new ideas. We can find that perhaps I don't need to just run on autopilot. I don't need to play the same old tune, because actually I have a whole orchestra here that I can use. And when I bring them all into cohesion and harmony, symphony is possible, even in the limited situations of life. Okay, so it's now, it's beyond 12. So this evening, this is a good place though, because now for the people who were with us last night as well, now we've covered this kind of introductory section. So this evening we'll continue, Krishna will begin to speak. And an interesting thing is going to happen is that we mentioned that yoga, one of the ways that Krishna defines yoga in the Gita is as efficiency or skillfulness. So the way he delivers his teaching is very, very skillful, very efficient. He says, first of all, basically he says, Arjuna, things come and go. Suffering is inevitable. When something's inevitable, don't get upset about it. That's a disempowering choice. When things are inevitable, just get on with it, as skillfully as you can. You're a human being. You're a child of nature. You've come out of your mother's womb. What do you know? Life is pulsation. It's cycles. It's constant change. Your task is to be steady, to remain present and aware through all the cycles so you can learn from them. And if you can really learn to be present and steady, then you can access your essence. You can tune in to that part of you that is constant, to that underlying oneness that is enabling you to have all your different experiences. And then this will get elaborated. And then Krishna's going to give us lots and lots of practical teachings about how we can respond when we find ourselves challenged and split. Does anybody have any questions about this morning?
No, it's beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. Is it clear?
Yeah.
And practical? Is there something from this morning you can think, oh yeah, I can work with that?
Yeah, in the practice, in every moment.
Good.
Yeah.
So this is the thing about the Gita that often, like when I first read it, I don't know what this is, it didn't seem very practical. It seemed like some ancient story, and I didn't really get the context. But once I studied with a teacher live, it's like, wow, it's so down to earth and so practical. So as Krishna begins to teach, which is where we'll continue this evening, that practicality will really continue.
What time will that be, sorry?
So tonight is 7. Yeah.
Until 9?
Yeah, we did 7 to 9, didn't we? Yeah, 7 to 9. Tomorrow is Moon Day anyway, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we could even go to
satsang.
We could even go to 9 minutes past 9. Yeah. Shall we just close with a mantra together? Yeah, so we'll sing Om. We'll end with Om, Shanti, 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 Om together. Actually, no, let's just sing a simple song together. We're going to sing Om.
Om.
Narayana.
Narayana.
Shanti.
Shanti.
Om.
Om.
So basically it means may everything be peaceful. Om Narayana Shanti Om. 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 Once more. Om Narayana Shanti Om. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming and sharing this morning.
Thank you.